I mean, I'm telling you, you are looking at it completely the wrong way.
Yeah.
Right? Just imagine you're in 1928.
Oh, here we go.
No, seriously,
Yeah.
put yourself there.
Yeah.
There is no modern technology,
Yeah.
right? No CGI, no safety nets, nothing.
Yeah, I know what the 20s were like.
Electricity is barely a given in some places, and some absolute madman of a director decides he is going to film one of the most famous, heavily documented trials in human history.
Right.
And he's going to do it using a visual language that, on paper, simply shouldn't work. I mean, it violates every known rule of the medium.
Hold on a second. Hold on. You're sitting there calling it an undeniable masterpiece, this grand architectural triumph of early cinema, but let's be absolutely honest with ourselves for a minute.
It is.
It is completely mental, and it is incredibly difficult to sit through.
Are you joking? It is a towering achievement.
It's a slog.
Cinema, the magic vehicle, a comprehensive guide. Journey 1, 1913 to 1950.
We are talking about Carl Theodor Dreyer's 1928 silent French film, The Passion of Joan of Arc.
Yeah.
La Passion de Jeanne d'Arc.
Yeah, we are, and it's exhausting.
You are missing the entire point of the aesthetic. I mean, our whole mission tonight, going through Pierre Champion's historical research, Joseph Deltile's accounts, and the analysis in cinema, The Magic Vehicle, is to figure out if this film is a masterpiece of pure intention or just a beautiful accident.
Right.
And you're sitting there writing it off before we've even started.
Hear me out. Hear me out.
No.
I am not missing the point, mate. I am looking at the reality of the screen.
The screen is brilliant.
You've dragged us into this pub to argue about a film that actively assaults the viewer. It's an assault on the senses.
It's supposed to be exhausting. It's the martyrdom of a saint, not a Sunday stroll in Hyde Park.
It's a shambles, is what it is.
A shambles.
A beautiful shambles in places, maybe, but still an absolute bloody shambles.
You are being ridiculous. Just look at the history of it. The history alone makes it a proud and exalted masterpiece.
The history is a myth.
The core facts of how this film even exists today are properly poetic. It completely defies logic. So
Yeah.
they finish the film, right? They make a few premiere prints in 1928. And then in December of that very same year, a massive fire breaks out at the Berlin laboratory where the original master negative is stored.
Right, the fire.
The whole thing goes up in smoke because, nitrate film stock made.
Highly flammable stuff.
It doesn't just burn. It literally produces its own oxygen as it burns. It is completely lost, destroyed, gone.
And if it had stayed destroyed, we wouldn't be having this argument over a pint.
Don't interrupt, because this is where the genius of Dreyer really comes in.
Yeah.
The man is utterly devastated, obviously.
You would be.
His life's work, ashes. But does he give up? No. He goes back into the editing room, and he personally recreates the entire master negative.
Recreates is a strong word.
He rebuilds his masterpiece using nothing but discarded material.
Right, the outtakes.
The double takes, the alternate angles, the scraps that were left on the cutting room floor. He patches it together by sheer force of will.
He was just guessing the rhythm.
He remembered the pacing and the rhythm of a film that no longer existed.
He makes a Frankenstein's monster out of the outtakes is what he does.
He rescues it.
Yeah.
And then even those reconstructed prints wear out and basically disappear for decades.
Yeah, it becomes a ghost story for film nerds.
Exactly. The film is basically a ghost. Film historians are writing about it based on hearsay and fading memories. Until 1985.
Oh, this is the best part.
A janitor is clearing out a cupboard in a Norwegian psychiatric hospital, of all places.
Yeah.
On Lake Norge in Telemark County.
Telemark County, right.
And what does he find in this asylum? A miraculously preserved original premiere print. The pristine, original 1928 cut.
In a cupboard.
It survives a fire, disappears for half a century, and is resurrected in a mental hospital. It's exactly like Joan of Arc's own posthumous vindication by the Vatican. It's a miracle.
That's rubbish, mate. That is absolute romantic rubbish.
How can you say that? It's a perfectly poetic parallel.
Because the mythological backstory is doing all the heavy lifting for the film's reputation today.
It is not.
You're completely seduced by the narrative of the lost reel. You're going, oh, it was found in a literal asylum, which frankly is exactly where this director belongs, given how he made the bloody thing.
It's a perfect analogy for Joan.
It isn't.
She is condemned, burned, and then 24 years later, the Vatican steps in and says, oh, actually, we got that wrong. She's innocent. She's a martyr. She's beatified in 1909, canonized in 1920. The film mirrors The Saint.
Yeah, sure. The film mirrors The Saint because it was a massive disaster that got patched up after the fact.
You are so cynical.
Look, losing the negative and having to cobble a 2-hour film together from scraps and discarded double takes explains exactly why it feels so jarring.
Jarring. It's avant-garde.
You're calling it avant-garde pacing. I'm calling it, well, he literally didn't have the right film stock to make the scene work, so he shoved in whatever he had lying around.
That is entirely unfair to his vision.
Let's think about the mechanics of editing in 1928 for a second, all right? You don't have digital non-linear editing. You are physically cutting and gluing celluloid.
I know how they edited film.
If the master take is gone and you have to use a secondary angle that wasn't framed properly, or a rehearsal take where the actor's pacing was slightly off, the edit is going to feel disjointed.
But the disjointed nature is what gives it its psychological edge.
It gives you a headache, is what it does.
No, it doesn't.
The rhythm isn't intentional. It's the rhythm of a ransom note.
A ransom note.
Yeah, you're trying to read a cohesive sentence, but all the letters have been cut out of different magazines. That's what a film made of outtakes is.
I completely disagree. I mean, it is entirely credible and down to earth. The rhythm of it is a relentless torrent of events. It tracks you.
It's a mess. Look, let's just step back and look at the actual script, all right?
Fine. Let's look at the script.
Because if the history of the celluloid reel rotting in a Norwegian mental hospital is so fascinating, does the actual script hold up? Or is it just a messy, bloated compression of real life?
The script is properly genius. Carl Theodor Dreyer, working alongside his historical consultant, Pierre Champion, took the actual, literal trial transcripts of Joan of Arc.
Yeah, the real transcripts.
We all know the standard Joan of Arc mythology, right?
We do, 1412 to 1431.
The visions, lifting the siege of Orleans in 9 days, turning the tide of the 100 Years' War for King Charles VII.
Sure, the standard hero stuff.
But Dreyer didn't want the battlefield hero. He didn't invent a Hollywood melodrama with swords and horses and big epic battles.
Because he couldn't afford to shoot them?
No, because he wanted to use the real words of a political prisoner trapped in an ecclesiastical kangaroo court.
A kangaroo court, yeah.
He drew on Joseph Deltel's books, Vie de Jeanne d'Arc and La Passion de Jeanne d'Arc. He took a dense, sprawling historical event and distilled it into something razor sharp.
Distilled, he butchered the timeline.
He condensed it. Joan of Arc was put on trial for heresy. There were 29 actual hearings. 29. Over the course of months. And Dreyer condenses all of that immense political and theological maneuvering into a single day.
You can't be serious. You think that's genius.
It packs the prolonged suffering, the wiles of the judges, the torture, her emotional breakdown, and the revocation of her contrition into a single claustrophobic Tuesday.
Tuesday, right.
It builds incredible pressure.
It strips away every ounce of historical nuance for the sake of cheap tension.
See, tension.
Yes, you cannot take 29 complex political, religious, and military hearings and shove them into an afternoon.
Why not? It's cinema.
Because you lose the entire mechanism of what actually happened. Think about the stakes of the real trial in 1431.
The stakes are incredibly clear in the film.
Are they? Because the English and the Burgundians weren't just bullying a teenager for a laugh. They were trying to mathematically trap this poor girl to invalidate the French king's claim to the throne.
Yes, to undermine Charles VII.
Exactly. If she's a heretic, then Charles VII was crowned by a witch. It was a massive, high-stakes game of political chess.
And Dreyer captures the essence of that.
He turns it into a historically bloated melodrama. By turning it into one rapid-fire day, it completely ignores the reality of how these ecclesiastical courts worked.
It's an artistic choice.
It strips away the nuance of the actual 24-year Vatican reversal process. It makes the judges look like cartoon villains who just woke up and decided to bully a teenager before lunch. It's exhausting to watch because nobody breathes.
But the claustrophobia is the point. I mean, I'll admit, when I first read the source material detailing the 29 separate trials, I was baffled as to how a filmmaker could possibly convey that much legalistic jargon silently.
Right, because it's mostly people talking in a room.
But then you see what Dreyer did. Because he condensed 29 days of trials into a single exhausting day, he couldn't rely on establishing shots of passing time.
No, he just didn't use establishing shots at all.
He couldn't show the changing of the seasons outside a window to pace the film. He had to trap the audience, just like Joan was trapped. And that brings us to the sets, or rather, the total lack of them.
Ah, yes. The great artistic triumph of empty space.
It is an evolution in cinema, And the way he achieved it is fascinating. Art directors, Jean Victor Hugo and Herman.
Warm.
Yeah. And by the way, Warm was the genius behind the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, so he knows a thing or two about expressionist space.
He certainly does.
They, along with Valentine Hugo and Jean Victor Hugo on costumes, built this massive, expensive, interconnected concrete set, an entire medieval fortress.
A literal castle.
And then Dreyer deliberately chose to shoot it so you barely see any of it. He created an environment entirely devoid of standard period details.
Hold on, let me stop you right there. What is the point of being a historical period piece if you remove the period?
It forces you to focus.
It just looks cheap.
It doesn't look cheap, it looks eternal.
Yeah.
Most of the film is shot in just 3 aesthetic interiors.
3 blank rooms.
Bare white walls. No tapestries, no grand Gothic arches, no bustling 15th century medieval market in the background. The camera only ventures outside for the final execution scene at the stake in Rouen, and even then the scenery is incredibly sparse. You don't get the distraction of French architecture.
You don't get anything to look at. They spent a fortune building an entire castle, mate.
For the authenticity of the actors.
And then he points the camera at a blank white wall. It's financial lunacy.
It's not lunacy, it's focus.
Yeah.
You look at the human soul. By selectively eliminating all that historical clutter, Dreyer places his protagonists outside of time and place.
Oh, come off it.
He discovers the best form to express his ideas, which is the bare human face. And he goes even further. He banned makeup.
Which was completely unheard of.
Exactly. In 1928 French cinema, everyone was caked in heavy grease paint, dark theatrical eyeliner, looking like mimes.
Well, there was a technical reason for that, to be fair.
Right, because of the film stock.
Exactly. I mean, in 1928, they were largely using orthochromatic film stock.
Which is very different from what we use now.
Totally different. It was highly sensitive to blue and green light, but almost completely insensitive to red light. So human skin, which naturally has red and yellow tones, would register on camera as incredibly dark, blotchy, and birdy.
Right.
That's why actors wore thick white grease paint to reflect the light and smooth out their features on this specific chemical emulsion. By banning makeup, Dreyer wasn't just being difficult, he was actively making his actors look raw, flawed, and heavily textured to the camera lens.
And it works beautifully.
Yeah.
Bare rooms, bare faces, real pores, real sweat. You see every single imperfection.
And real misery. Mate, stripping everything away doesn't automatically reveal the soul.
It does here.
Sometimes it just forces the viewer to stare at actors looking absolutely miserable for 2 hours without a single shred of visual relief.
That's the point of a martyrdom film.
If I am watching a film set in 1431 during the 100 Years' War, I want to see 1431. I want context. I don't want to feel like I'm trapped in a whitewashed dentist's waiting room while a bunch of bald men yell at a crying woman.
You're completely missing the psychological depth. Because there is nothing in the background to look at, you have no choice but to look at the actors' faces.
Which brings us to the absolute core problem.
Which brings us to the absolute core of why this film is a masterpiece, and you know it. The camera work of Rudolf Motet.
Oh, here we go. The tyranny of the lens.
It is unprecedented visual language. The visual balance of the entire film rests on extreme, magnified close-ups of faces. Motet's camera absolutely scrutinizes them.
It invades their personal space.
Rapidly changing, radically unusual camera angles. Think about the physical constraints of early cameras. These things were massive, heavy wooden boxes on heavy wooden tripods.
Yeah, they weighed a ton.
Yeah, Motet and Dreyer are digging literal holes in the floor of the set so they could place the camera below ground level, looking up at the judges, making them look like looming, grotesque gargoyles.
I'll grant you the technical effort was massive. Digging holes in concrete is dedication.
And then you are looking down on Joan from high angles, making her look incredibly vulnerable like a trapped animal. And the editing. The dynamic rhythm resembles modern television technique, decades before television even existed.
Modern television technique? What does that even mean in this context?
When the book says it looks like modern television technique, think about a heated 24-hour news debate today.
Like a panel show.
You know, when two pundits are screaming at each other, the camera snaps aggressively from one shouting face to another without showing you the whole room. Bam, host. Bam, guest. Bam, host again.
Yeah.
That rapid-fire isolation, that's what Dreyer was doing in 1928.
Mate, it is exhausting. It is physically obtrusive.
It is a masterclass. Look at the cast they assembled. Eugene Sylvain playing Bishop Pierre Cauchon.
Yeah.
You see every line of hypocrisy on his face magnified tenfold.
Yeah.
And Antonin Artaud the legendary Antonin Artaud playing Jean Monsieur.
Now, Artaud is an interesting inclusion, I'll give you that.
It's brilliant casting. Artaud was a real-life avant-garde theorist, obsessed with the theater of cruelty. He literally wrote about breaking down the barrier between actor and audience through shock and sensory assault. His presence in this film perfectly mirrors the psychological torture occurring on the set.
You can say that again.
And you have Michel Simon as the Inquisitor Jean Lemaitre, Maurice Schutz as Nicolas Leisler, you have Louis Ravet, André Burley as the prosecutor Jean Desteve.
All right. You don't need to read the entire IMDb page.
I am reading them because these aren't just performances. There are deep psychological excavations mapped by Matei's lens. And without spoken words, the title cards act as this fascinating counterpoint to the facial expressions. The text is wonderfully condensed.
If I wanted to stare up someone's nostrils for 2 hours to understand their inner self, I'd become a dentist.
That is terribly cynical.
It's the truth. The close-ups are so extreme and so relentless that they stop being human. They turn the judges into ridiculous caricatures.
They turn them into symbols.
It's just a parade of grotesque, looming faces shouting silently into a lens. There's no space to breathe, no wide shots to establish spatial awareness. It's just bam, big, ugly judge face, bam, crying girl face, bam, title card, over and over and over. It's visually obtrusive.
It forces you to confront the battle of words and faith.
It forces you to reach for paracetamol. And look, I'll give you this all right now.
A concession.
All these extreme close-ups wouldn't even matter. We wouldn't even be talking about them nearly 100 years later if the central performance wasn't so harrowing. I will concede that the performance is effective.
Very effective.
But you really, really have to ask at what cost that performance was achieved.
You're talking about Renée Jean Falconetti.
I am. And this is where your genius director starts to look a lot less like a visionary and a lot more like a sadistic tyrant.
She gives one of the finest screen portrayals of human torment in the entire history of cinema. Full stop.
Yeah, because it was real torment.
Falconetti was a variety theater actress, performing light, breezy comedy in Paris. This was her very first screen appearance. Think about that.
I am thinking about it.
There was absolutely no conceivable personal parallel between her, a glamorous 1920s Parisian actress, and a 15th century illiterate teenage martyr. Yet, under Dreyer's direction, she identifies totally with the character. She becomes Joan.
She didn't become Joan through some magical artistic osmosis, mate. He broke her.
He demanded absolute authenticity.
You're a proper narcissist with a camera. Let's talk about how did he get that authenticity?
Through rigorous method.
He forced her to kneel on hard stone for hours on end until her knees were bruised and bleeding. He played manipulative mind games with her. He cleared the set of everyone else and made her repeat grueling, emotionally devastating scenes over and over and over again until she was physically and mentally shattered.
It was a different era of filmmaking.
The tears you see on her face in those famous close-ups, they aren't acting, mate. They are the genuine tears of a woman who is being actively tormented by her director.
I admit, when I read the accounts of how he treated her on set, I struggled. It is incredibly difficult to separate the brilliance of the shot from the cruelty of the method.
You can't separate it.
But you look at the result. The performance culminates in the most bewitching and powerful final death scene at the stake in Rouen. It is the ultimate cinematic symbol against oppression.
The irony is rich, isn't it? A film symbolizing the struggle against oppression made by systematically oppressing the lead actress.
She gave the performance of a lifetime.
And after this film, Falconetti never made another film. Ever. She walked away from the screen completely, fled back to the theater, and eventually to South America, if I recall. Is that the hallmark of a great artistic collaboration? Or is it just actual documented misery captured on 2,210 meters of film?
You cannot separate the art from the profound impact it has had on everything that came after it. Joan of Arc has inspired countless films.
Sure, yeah.
Robert Bresson made one in 1961, The Trial of Joan of Arc. Gleb Panfilov made The Beginning in 1970. Jacques Rivette did Jean La Pucelle in 1993 with Sandrine Bonnaire.
All very different takes.
But none of them, absolutely none of them, capture the raw, penetrating power of Dreyer and Falconetti. Bresson's version is practically an icy recitation of facts compared to the volcanic emotion of Dreyer's film. It is consistently ranked on almost every list of the 10 best films ever made.
And maybe, just maybe, those subsequent directors realized you don't actually need to psychologically torture your lead actress to make a good point about history.
Look, the research in cinema, the magic vehicle, is spot on here. The authors argue that Dreyer was trying to build a completely new visual language. They call it a monumental achievement for a reason. He was fusing extreme avant-garde visuals with raw historical transcripts because he had the stones to try something nobody else dared.
I reckon the book is being way too kind to him, to be honest. You call it ambition, I call it a massive ego trip. Just because a director spends a fortune and makes everyone miserable on set doesn't make him a genius. He was a proper narcissist with a camera, and I think the book lets him off the hook because it's a classic.
Rubbish. It's not an ego trip, it's an evolution. The book gives you the actual credits and the technical breakthroughs that changed how every film is made today. If you find the scale of it a bit of a slog, that's on you, not the history.
I'm just saying, I'm looking at it with a modern eye, and it's half brilliant and half nonsense. The book defends him through a historical lens, but I'm sitting here thinking, mate, cut 30 minutes out of that scene and we'd actually have a story. It's bloated.
We've done 40 of these, so you know we're never going to agree.
Grr.
If you want to see if my co-host is just being a cynical git or if the book actually has it right, buy the thing. The link is in the description. Do you actually have the spine to read the real history, or are you staying lazy? Your call.
I still reckon silent film is inherently flawed when dealing with a trial based entirely on verbal sparring.
Oh, come on, not this again.
Think about it logically. You have these massive, incredible transcripts. The actual words Joan spoke to outwit the greatest theological minds of her time, the traps they set for her.
Yes, and the title cards convey them.
They asked her, "Are you in God's grace?" A literal trap. If she says yes, it's heresy because no one can know God's grace. If she says no, she admits guilt. And she answers, "If I am not, may God put me there, and if I am, may God so keep me."
Beautiful.
It is a brilliant checkmating verbal move, and you reduce that immense theological tension to a few text cards flashing between close-ups of sweaty foreheads.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it have been infinitely better with actors actually speaking the words?
No, absolutely not. The muteness is its power. By silencing the voices, you focus entirely on the emotion behind the words, not the theatrical delivery of a line.
It's a distraction. You spend half the time reading a card and then trying to hurriedly map the words onto a face that's already contorted in agony. It breaks the
It creates its own rhythm. But there is one thing we haven't touched on that really messes with everything we've just argued about.
Oh, what's that?
We started by talking about the fire.
Yeah, the Berlin laboratory fire.
Yeah, right. December 1928, that destroyed the pristine original master negative. The film we have today, the one found in the Norwegian asylum in 1985, is universally hailed as the definitive masterpiece.
Universally by some.
The rhythm, the tight framing, the relentless pacing, all the things you've been complaining about, I've been praising. But remember, Dreyer had to patch that version together from discarded double takes. It's quite literally a backup version.
Right, it's the B-roll.
Exactly. So if the patched together version of Cast-Offs, made from alternate angles and slightly offbeat pacing, is considered one of the 10 greatest films ever made, what did the actual original cut look like? Does that mean the true genius of the film we celebrate today, the jarring rhythm, the claustrophobia, was entirely an accident of reconstruction?
Or is the real masterpiece, the flawless cut he actually intended us to see, still just ashes in a 1928 Berlin laboratory? Mull that over.